see upon you all. Well, before beginning the talk, can we just begin with a small exercise? I have a small request. Can we all close our eyes? I'm just going to stretch our imagination, no tricks. Just a few seconds.
Yeah.
Okay, as you're closing your eyes, I'll just say a small hypothetical anecdote. Now, let us imagine a dying man who on his deathbed would be surrounded with his children and grandchildren. The man is contemplating his long, long life. Closing his eyes, he would walk down memory lane, remembering his accomplishments, failures, and regrets. And then suddenly, he would break the melancholic silence, open his eyes, calls upon his son, and exclaims with an expression of deep, wistful longing, "Son, of all the things I most regret, I wish I could have scored higher on my high school tests." Okay, we can open now your eyes. Well, as preposterous and absurd as this tale seems, yet more often than not, we actually act as if the most important goal of our life is to achieve the highest grades possible. Do you agree or not? Yes. Right? Okay. So this anecdote, although it's extremely absurd, but the more absurd fact is that we lead our lives and our students' lives to a dead end. Now, this is really mind-boggling, because the factory-like education of today, which is represented by this diagram, is actually inherited from the post-industrial revolution in order to present commodities for the market. So how come on the brink of the 21st century age, we're still using the same paradigm that is no longer efficient? Can you see the resemblance between the two sides? Okay, this is a factory and this is a school. Do you think there's a big difference between them in terms of settings and environment? Okay. Now, knowledge has become compartmentalized in a manner that is characteristically reductionist. It has become essential to search for an alternative paradigm that could be more consistent with the needs of a rapidly changing globe. I propose in this presentation that this paradigm is holistic education. Has anyone ever heard before of the term holistic education? Okay, any definitions?
All-encompassing.
Whole child, exactly.
All-round personality.
Exactly, all-rounded personality. But a more deeper or profound expression would mean that we would not only address the whole aspects of the child, but actually we would link him to the environment, to the cosmos, and to the globe. Now, the Global Alliance for Transforming Education in 1991 has made a very interesting definition. It said, each individual is inherently creative, has unique physical, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual needs and abilities, and possesses an unlimited capacity to learn. Wholeness implies that each academic discipline provides merely a different perspective on the rich, complex, integrated phenomenon of life. They called for a truly democratic model of education to empower all citizens to participate in meaningful ways in the life of the community and the planet. Because each of us, whether we realize it or not, is in fact a global citizen. They also stated in the definition that most important and most valuable important role in the most valuable part of the person is his inner or subjective life, the self or the soul. So is holistic education a new trend? Do you think this is a new paradigm, or has it been there for ancient times? Exactly. Well, the most interesting thing is, it has been the way ancient Egyptians educated their kids. And interestingly, when you say that we have to progress for the future, we never think of going back to the past to get inspiration from the paradigms they used. So I would like to take you on a journey in time to an inspiring bygone past, and that is the aim of demonstrating how the past could be really inspiring. In ancient and Islamic Egypt, the country witnessed a holistic ontological paradigm from which a very different educational system evolved, one that is perhaps more progressive than its modern counterpart. Okay, this is the picture of scribes, young students being trained in ancient Egypt. You see, they're so dedicated in writing down. So let us begin from the very beginning. The oldest recorded alphabet ever to be written in history was dated back to Egypt in 2000 BC. Such an early development of writing shed light on the value of knowledge in the cognitive framework of Egyptians. This is evidenced by the telling name they gave to school. It was called Per Ankh. Can you guess what Per Ankh means? Just
To
make
learn?
an educated guess.
To learn?
To learn, okay. Any more guesses? Mhm. Well, it was called House of Life. What's a telling name? So, Per Ankh means the house of life that includes all the different aspects that a citizen could ever use or learn from. It was an institution that was often referred to as a depository of wisdom, as it was concerned with preserving and creating different forms of knowledge. It was comprised of intellectual, moral, artistic, religious, physical, and vocational aspects, accentuating the all-rounded and holistic personality of young students, since knowledge was a concrete whole. Now, the House of Life was not just a school. It was a sanctuary, a library, a place of scribal learning, and medicine was practiced there, astronomy, magic, theology, mathematics, geography, music, morality, and dream interpretation. Any discipline, you name it, it was there. So, indeed, there was also a rigorous academic curriculum aimed to hone cognitive abilities in the students. In fact, the student in ancient Egypt had to study around 3,000 hieroglyphic signs, and this is like way more than the modern child could absorb in contemporary terms. Now, different sports and activities were also practiced in ancient Egypt, aiming to promote physical well-being by exercising and amusing the mind through the diversion of entertainment. Students were trained in sport activities such as archery, horsemanship, gymnastics, the use of arms, whereas girls received training in dancing, singing, and musical instruments. Another element of holistic well-being was manifested in how the environmental and cosmic aspect played a pivotal role in their education. Nature was not only a sacred text, it also was a learning environment. So students actually attended classes in temples, in open-air classes, in tombs. They were not restricted, to the very close borders of classrooms that we use today. More importantly, relevant literature confirms that learning also encompassed aesthetic and moral aspects, and that is really something that we miss today in our contemporary educational systems. Values education played an important role in the canon of Egyptian literature, which included teaching narratives and instructional wisdom drawn. Now, example of the teaching narrative drawn is the tale of the eloquent peasant. And this is one of the most interesting tales in the history of the human story. It is traced back to 2100 BC, and it enjoyed a wide celebrity in ancient Egyptian schools. Now, the tale presented a timeless story to which students could always relate to in any age. The tale presented a timeless story in the sense that it was about a peasant who refuses the injustice of a landlord. And then he decides to go to the governor to present his grievances. And he addresses that governor in around 9 eloquent speeches. At the end, justice is restored. But the whole tale was about gyrating around math. Have you heard the word math before? Okay, math is a very interesting concept that denies translation because it simplified and signified what the ancient Egyptian believed the world to be. Math is social order and cosmic harmony that is based upon each and individual act of justice and good deeds. So an ancient Egyptian, if he transgressed, if he made a sin, if he violated the laws, he would be in jeopardy of destroying the cosmic order of the whole universe. And that is a very interesting concept that blends between individuality and global citizenship, in fact, and the cosmic education. One of the interesting speeches in that tale, when the peasant says, "Yet a good deed will bring its own reward. Do for one who may do for you, that you may cause him thus to do." And this is maybe the first reference ever to the golden rule, which we always refer to in different cultures. Indeed, the tale not only encourages students to defend their rights, express their opinions, but also teaches them that a personal offense against justice could have collective repercussions. The cosmic order of the land was closely dependent on each and every act of justice, and this is a form of participatory citizenship that is extremely unique. Now, another impressive education form could be captured in the instructional texts that presented guidelines for personal and professional success. The maxims of Bitahotul, for example, included the leading principles of morality concurrent in its time, presenting an integrated educational experience as they discussed the personal, familial, social, and public sphere, even going to leadership skills, governance, and education in social emotional intelligence. Now, this is very interesting. This is a slide from Dondara Temple, one of the most beautiful relics in ancient Egypt, and it says the story of the wedges, the senses of life. Now, the wedges is, they believed that the wedges is a touch, taste, hearing, thought, sight, smell, and the receptor of input, and that they contain these six senses. They receive the data and the impulse of an electrical circuit that joins us as human beings to the cosmos. So they refer to the heart actually as being to the source of this spiritual energy, as we know. Now, research now confirms that the heart has more than 100 times signals, electric signals, than the brain. So, in fact, our modern education, which really kind of disregards the education, the spiritual and the emotional aspect, is really, disregarding like a very significant aspect of the human nature. Now, in continuation of the informal education the ancient Egyptians received, the Book of the Dead was like the final educational text that could be deemed as a synthesis of all the lessons learned. Owning a Book of the Dead in a tomb would be the equivalent of a student getting their hands on all the test answers they could ever need in every grade of school. This is basically because its purpose was to instruct the deceased for what seemed to be expecting him in the afterlife journey, and on how to overcome the dangers met. Now, in this interpretation, the ancient Egyptians seem to have added a holistic dimension that is extremely unique than any other educational paradigm, and that is educating for the afterlife, not just life. These are the 42 principles of math, and I would urge you to Google them because they're extremely interesting, and I think they have a comprehensive overall vision of morality in all cultures and religions. Now, moving back, let the journey take us also to another holistic paradigm, and that is Islamic Egypt. Now, in Islam, knowledge is of extreme significance. It is situated in both the heart and the mind. Because we believe the human being owns rational and emotional organs of cognition. And that's why we have 3 different names in Arabic for education, referring to nourishing the mind, refining the morals, and disciplining the character. And in Egypt, the mosque was a central hub of communal learning. It gradually became actually a school. It was not simply a place of prayer, but rather it housed intellectual and educational discussions as well as religious teaching. After the rudiments of reading and writing were mastered, the Quran was studied alongside grammar and poetry, logic, algebra, biology, history, and law. And this is an example of how mosques and schools integrated in one building to present a comprehensively rich educational experience to students. This was built in the 14th century. It's called the Sultan Hassan Mosque and Madrasa. Now, as you can see in the diagram, it exemplifies how open space was dedicated to teaching like different thoughts of interpreting Islam, as well as a school for children in secular subjects, and also a housing accommodation for the students who are coming from faraway countries. Now, interestingly, all these models were actually covered by charity funds. And the charity fund in Islam has propagated the dispersion of education in general. Now, these madrasas used a very progressive pedagogic tool, which is called al-halaqa. It is very similar to what we call now the Socratic method. So al-halaqa did not only promote equality, but also promoted student empowerment, facilitated engagement, open discussions, and freedom of expression. In fact, students were encouraged to challenge and correct the teacher, often in very heated exchanges. Now, this seems congruent with the holistic teaching method of discussion that exemplifies the principle of allowing room for the imaginative spheres, as advocated by Steiner. And Steiner is one of the most important holistic theorists in the modern age. Inconsistency with the holistic character of the Quran, much attention in the schools of Islamic Egypt was given to a character education as well as emotional and spiritual well-being, through teaching positivity, hope, emotional well-being, kindness, gratitude, patience, and resilience. In fact, more than 1,450 verses advocates a multitude of ethical virtues such as charity, benevolence, honesty, truthfulness, refraining from vain talk, and backbiting. The curriculum of the schools was relevant because the Quran spans a diversity of topics ranging from the beginning of creation to the day of judgment, from the particularities of treating wives with justice to the general guidelines of pursuing a good life and virtuous demeanor. It represents a roadmap to how a good life should be led and is replete with moral instructions, scientific observations, and directives related to maintaining social harmony as well. Now, the call for cosmic education is inherent in the Islamic paradigm. It is closely related to the perennial and perceptual call to ponder in the universe. And as these two verses proclaim, cosmic education is actually a very vital part of Islamic education. In Islam, the human being is the most dignified creature in the universe as the Creator made him his steward. But now this respect for individuality is coupled with the instruction to sustain the collective universe and is tempered with a call to participate in a civilization of the schools. It was thus unsurprising that there were approximately 750 foreign students from distant lands residing and studying in Al-Azhar, another progressive learning model in Islamic Egypt. In relation to the environment, the Quran and Hadith provide a comprehensive curriculum that governs human beings in their dealings with the universe, and which is in accordance with the values presented in Education for Sustainable Development and Earth Charter. Children from a young age became familiarized with a number of religious texts that teaches morality through a special relationship between the personal and communal environmental sphere. They learned that planting a tree or sowing a seed were all regarded as charitable deeds. And that is the difference between a holistic curriculum and a curriculum that makes so much disparities between the different subjects. Now, this is a diagram that presents a synthesis of most of the principal educational themes in the Islamic paradigm. Okay, so now we have brushed over in a very short and general overview of two very ancient yet holistic paradigms in Egypt's past. Now back to the present, the Egyptian education system, obviously, as many know, faces huge problems. It is plagued by insufficient funds and a pedagogy based on rote memorization. So the question is, can a real utopia be inspired from the past? Paradoxically, well, yes. An alternative model has been presented by a farming group called Seeker. Okay. Anyone heard of this of the Seeker before, or of this experiment before? Okay. Now let us play a guessing game. I'll show you some pictures, and you're kindly requested to describe each photo in a word or two. Now, what do you think of this?
Teamworking.
Okay.
Truthful.
What?
Fun.
Construction, exactly. Okay.
Crafting.
Crafting.
Interdependence.
Yes.
Concert.
Concert, music.
Energy.
Synergy, excellent. Thank you.
Harmony.
Harmony. And do you notice the seating arrangement in half a circle? Promoting equality and, there are no differences. Okay?
Skill development.
Skill development, motor skills, vocational training. Focusing. The whole child, again, addressing the special needs of each and every individual.
Inclusive.
Vocational inclusiveness, yes. Vocational training as well.
Engaged. Collaboration.
Collaboration, teamwork.
Interpersonal skills.
Interpersonal skills.
Diversity.
Uh-huh. What about the background?
It's close to the nature.
Very, very natural environment, integrated in the whole setting, so they're not, closed down in classrooms. And okay, this one, skills, yes. Gender equality, because also they're being taught very tough vocational skills.
Just a picture for females.
Yeah, okay, we have both. So what does this signify? Joy. Joy and happiness. I mean, it speaks of happiness. Okay.
Learning together.
Learning together. Outdoor learning as well.
Fun.
Fun. Extreme fun. Okay, so this is the holistic model adopted by Sikkim, which is actually a farming group that started by producing, organic food and products and medicine and so forth. And they switched to a very sustainable model of development that is based on integrating the different elements of the universe together. Now, Sikkim's name, interestingly again, comes from the ancient Egyptian word Sikkim, which means vitality from the sun. The whole model is inspired from past heritage. Students come to Sikkim from rural and urban areas, and most of the students are actually the sons and daughters of the workers working there in the farm. But also, they have underprivileged and privileged families coming together to educate their sons and daughters, Egyptians and foreigners alike. I mean, Sikkim hosts a number of global interchange programs. Conventional education in Sikkim is enriched with courses in rhythmy, crafts, play, sculpture, art, drama, dance, or music. And I would like just to stop on rhythmy. Have you ever heard of the term before? It's a very interesting activity. It is inspired by one of the most perfect instruments, which is the human body, as a mean of artistic expression through movement. And it continually develops as a modern movement art. The word eurythmy means beautiful rhythm, which is a unique vital movement expressing the regularities of speech and music by human beings. And in education, it supports children and young adults in the development of their body, in expressing their emotions, and helps them to bring them into harmony. Sikkim is also filled with practical and artistic work, imaginative play and fairy tales, puppetry and music, circle games, spirituality, healthy outdoor pursuits, educational trips, and connections with other cultures through a global network. Now, also the Sikkim International Science Center, which is also located in the farm, offers practical interactive activities on environmental and scientific topics. They also have a center for students who actually need professional skills and vocational training. Working and learning, as we can see, are interrelated and both practiced at all age levels. Such innovative learning experiences foster the maximum development of the whole child, head, heart, and hands, as we heard yesterday. Now, let us try to figure out how can all these lessons from the past and from the future present some recommendations or implications for educational practice. Well, the first thing is, do you think we can teach happiness and well-being? Is happiness something to be taught? What do you think?
It's an attitude.
Yes?
Comes from within.
Comes from what?
Within.
Within, okay.
But can be taught as well. The positivity in life and the attitude. We can guide the students towards positivity to get the happiness and happiness.
Exactly. Okay, wouldn't you have all liked to be given the recipe of happiness in schools? Imagine before graduating, you would take with a certificate a recipe for happiness that you could apply in your whole life. Wouldn't have that saved a lot of trauma? Well, the good news is happiness is teachable. Actually, Sir Anthony Seldon is one of the most important people who's working in the curriculum of well-being and in the education of positivity. Well, he was widely criticized around a decade ago because he presented the first well-being curriculum in his school, which is called Wellington School in England. Now, why was he criticized? Because it was believed at the time that the well-being curriculum was antagonistic to the curriculum aims and to academic achievement. But the surprise was that around in 2006, the students' academic ranks soared up high from 65% to 93%. And that was a segment of the same students, the same academic quality. So that is like extremely important research evidence that could actually validate the importance of introducing happiness and well-being in the curriculum. Sir Selden believes that what is not let out of young people, what is not nurtured by the age of 16 or 18, may remain dormant in that person for the rest of their lives. So if you don't really teach students at that age how to be cooperative, how to be positive, how to bounce back from adversity, how to have resilience, we are afraid that it will be too late. So maybe it is time for schools to introduce resources and actually time for stillness, mindfulness sessions, kindness projects, and resilience exercises. Sir Anthony Selden made this website, which is extremely important for adults and students alike, and this is the result of extensive research that actually summarized the steps of happiness. If you want to lead a happy life, if you want your students to lead a happy life, you just have to follow these 10 amendments, for instance, and start practicing them and start integrating them into your daily routine. And from experience, I can guarantee that this is really applicable. Now, the second thing we can learn is that we should get students out of the classroom, where life happens, and allow them to engage in a profound, skill-based experience that will make them ready to meet real life in the face. The third thing is, we should make, again, important use of the power of the human story. We should resort to innovative and different pedagogies that would limit rote memorization. Actually, stories are advocated by holistic theorists, such as Steiner, that they actually enrich emotions and shape moral values. 4, it is beneficial to instill a sense of purpose and responsibility between the individual and the universe, and train students to be responsible stewards on Earth. In fact, Maria Montessori believes cosmic education to have developed the children's minds, their visions, and the creative power. The 5th thing is, it would be interesting to integrate cultural exchange programs and virtual global projects between students from different backgrounds to limit the rising surge of fanaticism and xenophobia that we're witnessing all over the world. 6, we should adopt a pedagogy of emancipation and participatory democracy, where education is not a political tool but a human right owned and controlled by the society. And for those of you who are interested in pedagogy of emancipation, I recommend that you would refer to the work of Frere and Ilan Illich. Lastly, and most importantly, we should build schools that are not factories of production, but hubs of creativity and miniatures of life. Schools that instill a growth mindset and not just focus on growing grades, that work on fulfilling students' aesthetic, spiritual, cognitive, and social emotional capacities. Let us bring religious and spiritual intelligence back into the curriculum. Let us bring happiness into the curriculum, as well as morality, peace, global citizenship. Let us, most importantly, allow students to lead a flourishing life of purpose. And let us remember that the whole is always, always greater than the mere sum of the parts. I would like to end this presentation with the photo of this student in our school. I think any education that deprives the child of a smile is not an education worth mentioning. So let us go back to our countries and respective schools with the sole aim of drawing a smile on each and every child. I wish you happy lives, and I wish you would leave an impact of happiness on each and every person you meet. Thank you for your listening.
Thanks very much, Tina. We're really pushed for time now, I think. But if there are any questions, we can take maybe maximum 2. Does anyone have any questions?
Just I wanted to know, according to the curriculum of happiness, just any one event that is mentioned in the curriculum. How in the teaching, as you said, can you mention an event or activity what they're doing?
Yes.
According to that curriculum.
Happiness curriculum.
Yes.
Well,
Well-being.
the WellBeing curriculum
Yeah.
was implemented at Wellington School by Sir Anthony Selden. And if you would like to have like a complete reference for all the activities, there is a website called Action for Happiness, and it has all the resources you can ever use. But I would recommend that you would work bottom up, from the whole community of your school, and maybe even start like happiness campaigns and kindness projects and all different sorts of activities. So it's not even restricted to that single curriculum.
Thank you.